Good evening. Welcome to the First Friday Show. I'm Mililani Trask, and I'll be your host for this November 2018 edition of First Friday, the Unauthorized News. If you're tuning in, and tonight is Friday, the first Friday of November, then you're watching a live show. We welcome your calls, or if you have comments or questions, let us know. The number is 834-2886. 834-2886. We have some volunteers standing by to take questions. Tonight's topic, a critical one for the Hawaiian people and all of Hawaii. What is happening with Maunakea now that the disgusting and terribly disappointing administrative rules have come out? Joining me tonight, and thanks for flying in.
Thank you for the invite.
Yeah. Hawaiian educator, coming all the way from Maui, Kaleikoa, Kaeo. Thanks for coming on the show, Kaleikoa. You know, we always start out our show by pausing to ask our guests to say a little bit about themselves, your background, your parents, and also I think in your case, what made you decide that you were going to become a college-level educator?
That's a good question. You know, I'm a Maui boy myself, born and raised on the island of Maui, proud graduate of Baldwin High School. My dad comes from Hamua, Ani'o, in Hana, where my dad's family comes from. My mom is actually Irish, but raised in Liverpool, England. And so I guess you would say I'm a classical hapa person. And I was, you know, raised for most part in Kihei, Maui, South Maui, when actually Kihei was still a little town and eventually, you know, became this quite a large population now, but also kind of a quasi resort area, I guess you would say, in South Maui. I was fortunate enough to, you know, have some real good experiences as a young boy. You know, being around many of the events. You know, from work with the whether it was Kaho'olawe that was going on or access rights, and so from an early age, I guess I was around and kind of been around the questions in regards to Hawaiian rights and so forth. Whether it was from our family trying to protect our ancestral lands and so forth. And so I was, you know, kind of lucky in a sense that I always had a kind of consciousness in regards to knowing that this was a struggle that our people were in. Fortunately enough, I was able to, and I always use the word fortunate, it was a privilege to go to college myself, you know, really the first person in my family. You know, I think for many of Hawaiians in my age, really, you know, really were the first in the families to go to college at that time.
Exactly.
And so, you know, I appreciate that opportunity and the chance, and I was really blessed to have had, you know, wonderful professors. You know, of course, Dr. Hananeke Trask was a very important professor, Dr. Lilikalaka Leiva and other friends that I met at the University of Hawaii, where I in fact, interesting, I was a U.S. history major when I first walked onto the campus
You're
at
kidding
Manoa.
me.
Yeah. I actually was playing football for a while too at the University of Hawaii at that time.
Well, I can see that.
And then I walked down one day and I was at Campus Sena and I heard speeches going on for the first time. You know, Dr. Trask and Kanalu Young, I think John was also speaking, John Osorio, others. And I remember thinking for the first time, wow, there's actually a field called Hawaiian Studies that I could actually study in. And I was kind of fortunate. I had been around a lot of like learning. And so I had actually read a lot of stuff already. So I was very, you know, knowledgeable, I guess you would say, for someone my age at that point. You know, I read all the classic stories. And
so you were in American history, but you were actually reading and learning about Hawaiian history.
On my own already, you know.
You changed your major.
Right then and then. I walked in the next day, I signed up, and there was only a handful of us at that very beginning. But I really, you know, I would say, you know, I was at a very blessed time because I was really at that time when Hawaiian Studies really, it kind of gave birth to itself in many ways.
Yes.
You know, many of the courses and directions and ideas.
You know, I think that's a very good way to explain it, because what happened was consciousness grew on the campus. At a certain point, faculty and Hawaiian students were asking, why don't we have a center? Why do we have a center for Korean studies and others? And that eventually mushroomed into and became the Kamakakuo Kalani Center. And it was only with a lot of help from people for many years. It was a struggle getting the funding, all of it.
I always joke because, you know, Dr. Hanani didn't actually drive back then. So we used to actually have to take her to the legislature and go out and meet all the different legislators out there to actually get the funding for the center back there. So, but even as a young Hawaiian back then, I really appreciate the fact that I was part of that early generation that really saw the transition from not having any kind of consciousness of being Hawaiian on campus, really. Not having any kind of really understanding of that, to the point where we started to organize in campus, and whether it's through counseling programs or through the Hawaiian studies courses or Hawaiian language courses, this conscious started to build of what it was to be Hawaiian. And so we quickly got involved with a lot of the politics at that time. And of course, we were members of Kalani, Hawaii back in that period also. And this also helped us really to learn, to understand politics and understand really the struggles that our people were engaged in throughout the islands at that time. Yeah. That really helped me to meet, in fact, many of people who became my own teachers in many ways, besides, Dr. Trask, where there was Dr. Kekuni Blaisdell, Solikihe Niheo, and Terry Keko'olani, and others that I got to know at that time. And so, and they, in many ways, planted the seeds in me. And, I always cherish and hold very dear, what they shared with me. And I hold that so dear that when I teach myself as an educator myself today, I always make it a point to make sure that the next generation hear those stories and really understand.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because a lot of people go to college. In fact, the vast majority of people that go to college get a degree, but they don't really wind up living a life or dedicating their life to continuing that process. But something impacted you and made you decide that you were going to become an educator. What was that?
I think, in many ways it comes natural to me, I guess. I'm a natural...
teacher.
Well, I was going to say storyteller, perhaps, is the best way to, but I think part of that is because I saw the value of education. I really understood how powerful education is in regards to once you see, especially with the Hawaiian situation, once you understand our history, then a lot of things make sense why our people are in this particular condition. Once you understand what happened, for example, in 1896, and the fact that the so-called Republic of Hawaii officially banned the Hawaiian language as a medium of instruction, then it really made sense of understanding, well, why are people in this particular condition? That this wasn't something that just, inevitably just occurred naturally. There was this kind of mythology that, I always tell this story. When I was in high school, I remember as a junior in high school taking modern history of Hawaii. And basically reading 2 pages about the overthrow that said the overthrow happened, the Queen cried, I think, and that was it. We had no consciousness of there was a strong
it was a deliberate effort
exactly
to misinform, and also to support a view of history that we know now is a lie.
Total lie.
And when you look at what happened with the way Hawaiian history was taught here, it's very, very similar to the way American history has been taught. We kind of leave out the chapter with the slaves. And then when you look at what happened with the American Indian history, it just confirms it. But for those of us who came out of the era you're describing, and of course you're much younger than I, the educational effort, I think, brought forward a new generation of leaders across the board. And Hananike always said that she would never waste her life pursuing any career other than education, because that's what mattered.
I think she understood the power that planting those seeds had. Because I always say, again, you can see that seed that she planted in me. I'm planting those seeds in the next generation, and you can see the level that this new generation of scholars and academics what they're doing now. I mean, we just had a recent group, for example, that went on a trip to Europe, in fact, to investigate Hawaiians in Europe, the Hawaiians Abroad program, in fact. In this past summer, my daughter was able to go, and they actually went to France and went into, exactly where they went into a room, but they actually saw the actual treaty, the 1843 treaty that was signed, the proclamation which recognized Hawaii's. This was when I went to school, we just read about it as footnotes.
These are the real historic documents.
See those things to it.
Yes.
So it comes, that idea of history alive. You can see this young generation. They're experiencing things that I can look back at. I could imagine, those who have passed on already, those who led the way. I can imagine how proud they would be to know that I don't think they would ever dream. I never dreamt that one day my daughter would actually see the Anglo-Franco Proclamation.
Well, you're going to be living long enough to see what happens to your granddaughter.
Right, yeah.
You know, before we jump into our main story, I had one other question to talk with you about, because earlier you were talking about our history, and people just didn't realize, you didn't know yourself until you read it and learned it, how our language was literally outlawed.
Yeah, right.
Recently, you yourself got into an issue relating to the speaking of Hawaiian language. It was true that that law prevented our people from speaking Hawaiian, but many years ago, many Hawaiians, ourselves included, insisted that there be a law put back on the books saying that we're not an English-speaking state. There are two official languages here. Now that law has been on the books for quite a while, but when you went to court and you spoke Hawaiian, what happened?
Yeah, so it was very, I mean, I have used Hawaiian, in fact, there are others have also, we've used Hawaiian many times in courts.
Yes.
And what we find out is depending upon the judge. In fact, the Maunakea case in 2015, when we were arrested into 2016, we actually, several of us defended ourselves in Hawaiian. And there was no problem, it was provided for us. We went through the trial, and in fact, eventually we got found not guilty because of the Supreme Court's rulings back in, I think, 2016. But however, this is not really a policy per se within the judiciary. This is kind of more like a, in many ways, it's really up to the judges how they can decide to include or not include Hawaiian language. So that's really what happened with my particular case.
I think that was what happened with your case, but the outcome was not. I mean, that was a horrible mistake made by the judge. Everybody on the bench saw it. Every attorney saw it. Immediately, it had to be undone. And the thing is that you have a situation like this that arises in court. My God, this law's been on the books. It's been used for years. But what happened in your case, I believe, was we had a judge. It wasn't that he didn't know the law. Oh. He just decided that he didn't want to follow it. And he got slapped down pretty quickly on that. Congratulations to you.
But I just to add to that, we got to be careful also, although the judge is the person, many times people point the finger, we got to also remember it was the prosecutors who actually put the motion in, who said, from now on, you cannot use Hawaiian. Although, the people don't realize, I was using Hawaiian. In this particular, I had Hawaiian translators already going on within this case. And it just came up one day when they finally decided,
but I was
more use of Hawaiian, which made no sense at all.
The prosecutors pulled this. The thing is, I'm sure it's been tried before because there's been many other cases, as you pointed out, many other people speaking Hawaiian. I'm sure the prosecutors have tried it, but you expect that the person sitting on the bench is going to know what the law is and follow it. And I think that people were watching, and when they saw what happened, there was an immediate response.
Yeah, I think the idea was I was going to be intimidated somehow. And for me, I came out very clearly and said, I mean, if you're going to put me in jail for speaking Hawaiian, I'll gladly go if that's the issue. Because, I mean, fundamentally, for a Hawaiian not to be able to defend himself about an issue about being Hawaiian in defense of Haleakala at that particular case, I mean, it's outrageous that they would, this is a human right that we have as a people. And as I always say, we can never expect and wait for the so-called powers to be to grant us these rights. There will be times that we, in fact, must take that stand and demand that we be treated equally as human beings upon this earth.
And this case with Maunakea and what you have previously experienced, what's been going on with Haleakala, is really the last straw. It's really the bottom line. We have a right to worship the Creator. We have a right to be Hawaiian in practice. These are rights, and we're going to take a look at the laws. But when you have flagrant disregard from the bench, it's the kind of thing that you have to shut down immediately. And I think it's something that we need to remember now, because we have people who are pushing violence. We have a situation where the state has spent tens of thousands of dollars for weapons, ammunition, shotguns, semi-automatic rifles, all for use against the Hawaiian community, which we're going to get to. But let's open our main show and looking at Maunakea. I know, Kaleikoa, that you are a Maunakea practitioner. I've seen you up there. But I wanted to ask you first to just share your mana'o before we talk about this and that, about your own personal feeling about the Mauna and about why you are a Hawaiian practitioner and why you feel that it is a wahipana, it is a sacred place.
I mean, fundamentally, we all know when it comes to mana, those places that have the highest mana, Maunakea, those that are the highest peaks on all our mountains are always considered the most sacred spots. And therefore, the mountain itself, or the summit themselves, are the temples. And that's why you rarely find, in fact, many times, you rarely find any so-called artifacts being built upon these temples. And this is where we have much of this kind of conflict with the Haole world in many ways, who an archaeologist will look at a spot and only make determinations of that spot being sacred or important if they can find evidence or artifacts of that spot. Whereas for Hawaiians, the more sacred the spot, in fact, what you find is, in fact, the direct opposite. And as I was taught, it's not the building or the heiau that's built there that makes the spot sacred. It was the spot itself that was sacred, and therefore, that is why we would go to certain places to perform ceremonies. And so, that's a very big fundamental difference that we have compared to the Haole world. And I think they don't recognize that the summits themselves, those are the temples. So what you see with the telescopes.
There is a teaching on it, Komokea Kua. Komoke Kanaka. Komokea Kua, places reserved for the Creator are inappropriate for human beings in traditional times as today. Only for very special ceremony, for very special reasons do you go to the summit. When we had our 3 years of worship for the Apapalani ceremonies, these were held at the base of the summit because it was not traditionally a high ceremony that required it. But Hawaiians themselves have that teaching. Those things reserved to the Akua are inappropriate places for humankind. One of the things I had wanted to ask you about, I know that you have taken a look at the administrative rules. I myself was shocked when I saw them. How long has the state auditor called for administrative rules? For a total of 16 years. What are administrative rules? Well, they're a legal requirement. There's a legal requirement, not only in Hawaii, but all other states. When you move to develop state land, rules are adopted by the governing body, the government, state, federal, to ensure that there is appropriate protection for the land itself and also to accommodate those that would be users. And this is especially important where you have private sector trying to grab onto public lands and exclude members of the public. This is why we have a requirement. If you look at the state audit that came out about a year and a half ago, after 16 years of waiting for rules, I picked it up and said, here we are again. I read the audit, and I was surprised that the auditor finally told the truth. There are no administrative rules on Maunakea because Governor Ige said don't pass them. The university had draft rules, but Ige said don't pass it. Here we are, nearly 2 years later, we see the rules, 45 pages plus, 45. They come out, and what they do is they criminalize our right to worship Creator, our right to gather the sacred water. They criminalize from time immemorial, Hawaiian women have taken the picos of the babies to Lake Waiau. Now this is criminalized unless you jump through a horrendous process that has been fabricated for the very purpose of preventing us from going there and the very purpose of arresting and criminalizing us, which both of us have already experienced, and in both of our cases, because we had rights to worship. Charges were thrown out.
That's the first thing to really understand that we've never had, as a people, we've been here for 2,000 years, and we've never had a situation where our people now will be, when you look at those rules, as they set these rules, the mentality of, again, this idea of controlling, criminalizing, and in many ways eliminating how we decide or how we wish to practice our religion or practice our spirituality. I think this is something to really understand. This is, this is, and when you understand in a bigger picture, this is not a Hawaiian organization. that is deciding ways to determine how best for Hawaiians to enjoy or celebrate or to pray or to experience the summit of Maunakea. This is really an institution made up really of non-Hawaiian powers for their own purpose really, which is of course for them to maintain really total control of the summit, to do as they wish, because they understand that the reason why they can't do as they wish is because that place has always been known and seen and understood as a sacred site.
Yes.
So what you need to do, you need to limit what we can experience on there, and therefore if they can define our so-called experience, this allows them to really do as they wish. And that's really the bottom line. The whole purpose of this is for them to have the so-called power to do as they wish on that mountain. In the context of the TNT, again, we put into I'm very clear about this. Remember, TNT, the funders of the TNT are from China, Japan, India, Canada, Caltech. So their interests, their worldview, their desires are being protected.
And what is
none
it?
of
What
those
is
rules
the
are
basis of it?
and none of the rules are
commercialization
exactly.
for profit.
Exactly.
It has nothing to do with maintaining the Mauna. In fact, even Governor Ige has admitted they didn't take care of the Mauna. It's covered with invasive species. So we can see that they failed to protect the Mauna under the
and that's been
use
proven.
permit.
And that's already been proven.
Yes, that's been proven and admitted. One of the things that is so outrageous about the administrative rules is that the administrative rules are tapered to target Hawaiians. And I say this because for all these years there was no rules, but they did make little exceptions. So we have rules for hunters and license for many years for hunters. We have people who are allowed to go up for what's called snow play, making snowballs. All of these things have been taken care of, and now we have the 45 pages of rules, but when you read it, it says all previous permittees get to come up without any rules. When I looked at it, I was shocked. In order for Hawaiians now to go up the Mauna, you can't just leave, go up, say a prayer, take the piko, and leave it. Now you have to...
Can gather more than 10.
You
Again,
have
just like
to,
apartheid, we get the same kind of rules as apartheid.
You have to apply for written permit at least 2 weeks ahead of time. Once you apply for the permit, you have to go to have a meeting in person at OMKM. So all the 5,000 people who marched on Oahu, you can't go to pray anymore. You have to fly to the Big Island, have a meeting with OMKM, is what it said. I said, well, who is that? I sent an email. Who are they? You know, are we meeting with the board? Are we meeting with Ishibashi? Who are we meeting with? No response. After you meet with the OMKM, spend hundreds to fly up here, rent a car, then you have to come back for a second meeting with the Kahuku Mauna, the state created and recognized kahunas of the mountain, led by Chad Babayan. I sent a second email. Why are we meeting with these people? What is the purpose of it? What criteria are they using? No response on that. So you have to go up, you have to have these meetings. After that, you wait in line because the rules say that anyone that has priority, all commercial users, all hunters, you can't go if they have a priority. Then there's only 2 more things you have to do. If you're going up with a group, as you said, 10 or more people is now a group. Why did they say 10? Because the commercial tour vans have 10, but 1 is a driver, so they're only bringing up 9 paying visitors. All the commercial vans go up, but they're not considered a group. But if you're a halau coming for the Merry Monarch, you have more than 10 people, you have to go through all of this. After you have the 2 meetings, after you look at what your priority is, you only have 2 more steps to go. Number 1, you have to buy a 4-wheel drive truck, because they won't let Hawaiians go up the mountain in a regular car. And after you either buy or rent a truck, then you have to pass, and this is the one that kills me, the compatibility test. Should we allow groups of Hawaiians to come up? They must pass the compatibility test set out in Section C 20-2662. Group permits are only given when you have passed evaluation for compatibility. Number one, you must show that your use, our prayer to the Creator, is compatible with the function and purpose of the U of H management area. It has to be consistent with the approved management plans. It has to be compatible with existing uses. It has to be compatible with the schedule for construction, repairs, and maintenance. And any applicant with a prior record of non-compliance, i.e. all the guys that got arrested, cannot get a permit for the rest of their life. You know, when I go there to
Although
pray,
we are arrested for our right to defend our spirituality and religious.
Yes, which
You
the
see,
courts
again,
have
I
already
guess
thrown out.
that's the thing,
Yes.
which we're found not guilty of. So I mean, that
Yes.
mentality that they're protecting the rights, our religious rights,
Yes.
by keeping out those of us who have fought for the protection of our
Kaleikoa,
religious rights in the past.
It now puts us in a position, it now puts me in a position
criminalize us guys.
where I either can't go to worship or I have to go to worship and stop what is happening. There's no other alternative we have now. The Wahine practitioners for 3 years have sent written requests. We participated in every meeting they had to discuss rules. We described ourselves. We told them where our ahu was, what we put on it, when we came. We had a section in which we said, these are things you can do to help us. Put up signs. Tell people we worship here. Give us some privacy. Let people know not to bring beer bottles to the sacred ahu. All of these things, we couldn't get a response from them for 3 years. And now they come out with these rules to criminalize our practice. But these rules, just like that judge that said, well, today we're not going to allow Hawaiian.
Exactly. Yeah,
we have to follow the law. Let's take a look. We have some graphics of what the laws are. I think the laws are overwhelmingly on the side of the Hawaiian practitioner. And what we did was we just put together a little summary starting with the U.S. Constitution. If you take a look at it, the Constitution says that Congress can't make a law establishing any religion. If that's the case, why is the state saying that they're going to have a new group called the Kahunas of the Mountain who are going to interpret our right to worship? They cannot abridge our freedom of speech, press, and they cannot stop the right of our people to peacefully assemble. As you were saying earlier, prior to the show, this is why we have peaceful demonstrations. We will follow the way of Gandhi and Martin Luther King. We have a right to peacefully assemble, including on Maunakea. The state constitution says that Hawaiians have a right in Article 12, Section 7, that you have a right to practice your culture. If you take a look at Hawaii Revised Statutes, Chapter 171, this is the law that was passed specifically to impose penalties for illegal uses of Maunakea. This law says no person will be sanctioned under this section for exercising Native Hawaiian gathering rights and traditional practices authorized by Article 12, Section 7. We have a special law in this state saying that we cannot be sanctioned for practicing on Mauna Kea. Well, that's being thrown out. And then, of course, Act 132 cracks me up. The university goes to the legislature in 2009. A law is passed. This is the law, Act 132, that gives the university autonomy in managing Mauna Kea. And what does it say? It says access for traditional and customary Native Hawaiian cultural and religious purposes shall be accommodated. They decided to throw it out. But let's take a look at another law, Section 711. We have a criminal law in this state saying that it is a Class C felony to desecrate a place that is a place of worship or a burial place. Maunakea is a well-known burial place, and from time immemorial, it has been a place of worship for our people. What does desecration mean? It means you don't deface, damage, pollute, or physically mistreat in any way the sacred altar of our people. Funny thing, when Kaikahele questioned Stephanie Nagata, and then we had the contested case with Wally Ishibashi, the question came up, who was it that went and smashed down the Ahu altar that we were using on Mauna Kea? Well, we found out the office OMKM staff had sent a little message over to the IFA, the Institute for Astronomy, directing them to go and smash the Ahu down. Well, that is a criminal violation. That's a Class C felony. And finally, international law, the UN Declaration, gives to all indigenous peoples the right to practice, revitalize their culture, and also the right to maintain and strengthen our distinctive spiritual relationship with the Aina. International, state, and federal constitutional law are all supporting the right of our people to go to Mauna Kea. Kaleikoa, you have begun already. Actually, more than a year ago, you and other Hawaiian warriors came forward saying that the time had come to begin our training of our people for nonviolent, peaceful resistance. Why don't you talk with us a little bit about
we understand,
that?
You know, although we see words printed in paper many times and laws, and I think this is part of the problem that we have. That, I mean, going back to the issue, we can use language as an example again. And when I look at the Mauna Kea case, I always tell people, this is really no different. What you see happening is really no different than what went on in 1896 in the mentality to ban. Why did they want to ban the language? The purpose of us was to extinguish the ability for us to really have the identity through our language.
Yes.
Mauna Kea is such an important sacred space for our people, very much in the same way. They create these kinds of laws, although there's supposedly laws already on the books to protect our rights. You know, whether it's the rules, whether it's the Supreme Court decision which just came in, the main purpose, as I'm trying to say, is really no different. The purpose of moving the direction or the mentality that's coming from the state of Hawaii this time really is no different than what happened with the Republic of Hawaii in 1896. And that is, of course, is to destroy, their hopes really is to destroy and erase our consciousness, which is based upon our spirituality and our connection to sites like Mauna Kea. And as I've been saying, if we cannot keep Mauna Kea protected and safe, we, in fact, as Hawaiians, will not have any abilities or protections under law to keep really any other place safe. So Mauna Kea, to me, what it represents is that apex. It represents that kupuna. It represents that place, which is really the heart of our people in many ways. And so, as Mauna Kea goes, so does our people.
Yes.
So as Mauna Kea, as you saw the rise of the people fighting against the TMT, you also saw that was a direct reflection of the consciousness of our people as we rose in this new chapter of our history. And so this reactionary politics that's coming from the state, this is a reaction. They're really afraid of us. And this is their attempt, and I use the word attempt, to, in many ways, intimidate us, maybe even go on intimidation to the part of actually using violence, perhaps, to keep us from being who we need to be.
There's no doubt. You know, in my mind, Kaleikoa, there is no doubt. When you take a look at what has just happened in the last few years, not too long ago, we had a situation when we were all up the Mauna, you were being arrested and others. We had a situation at that time where one of the Mauna Kea DLNR, in fact, the chief, Rubello, posted a photo of himself holding up his semi-automatic weapon saying, "Meet my friend." It was a little text he sent out for Mauna Kea Hawaiians who were worshiping up there. Well, only Senator Willis Barrow came out saying, "Wait a minute, what's going on here?" Well, shortly after that happened, there was a huge media explosion that guns had been fired on Mauna Kea. A blog was posted on the Subaru site saying guns had been fired. The scientists were under attack. They had a photo of the bullet hole and the blogging comments, the result of the Hawaiian terrorist groups. One guy was so strange. His comment was, "I am the angel of God," something like that. "I'm going to come for you now." I mean, it was really very strange. But what was even stranger was that fabricated lie, which
and it
later,
was fabricated, that's the point. Right?
Well, not only was it fabricated, but a few days later, the media had to come out with little articles saying there was no bullet hole on the Mauna, there was no shots fired. The photo turned out to be a photo of a dent in the door that was caused by high wind, and they actually had found the repair invoice for it. So it was all a big lie, but the media quietly played it down. Why? Because 2 months later, Suzanne Case and Mr. Rodello went to the Board of Land and Natural Resources with a request for $53,000 to take care of the domestic terrorists. They purchased semi-automatic weapons. I think it was either 10 12-gauge shotguns or 12 10-gauge shotguns, and thousands of rounds of ammunition for use on the domestic terrorists. Governor Ige was aware of it. This went to the board. They were given the $53,000, and since that time, they've been using the weapons. I believe that was the case, but then a few weeks later, a newspaper article came out saying that there was now a new man in charge, but he was being forced to leave, Mr. Friel. Mr. Friel went in and he wanted tens of thousands of dollars for more weapons for the Muslim terrorists. When people asked, who are the Muslim terrorists? Where are they here in Hawaii? His response was, fishing vessels coming in from Asia have Asians on them and they're Muslims. So they've got to be terrorists. He was quietly pushed out for racial profiling, but what he did on the way out was he filed 12 requests for investigations. He wanted to expose what was going in there, and when I looked at it, I was shocked because he was asking for investigation into what happened with all the other guns and ammunition that they had that had now somehow disappeared and been stolen. What happened to the $53,000 worth of guns? Were those the guns stolen? You know, we know what happens here. We just had a situation on Oahu where Catherine Kealoha's attorney had his gun stolen, and then a few days later, there was a shootout with the police, drug dealer killed. There's the gun. Are we now going to have the stolen DLNR guns show up when Hawaiian practitioners are being killed? It's happening on Oahu. Why the guns? Why did Governor Ige come and speak throughout the islands, come to Big Island, saying, you elect me, I'm calling out the National Guard. They'll be up there with the guns. I understand that Ige's campaign was the one that asked the media, when you interview all those gubernatorial candidates, you make sure you ask them, are they going to bring out the National Guards with the guns on the Hawaiians? And the media, of course, just played right along. You know, thank God for Kim Koko Iwamoto and Colleen Hanabusa, the only two who said no. You know, people have rights and we need to work with people. You don't call out the guns to kill people who have constitutional and human rights to pray. But of course, they won't be elected. Now we're stuck with Governor Ige. I mean, I'm really worried about it because they've fueled lies. The media has supported it. They've invested in weapons. And when you yourself were arrested, I was there when they took you
back in the
down
paddy
to
wagon.
that. I was out there, you know, hemuing them. But, you know, why all the heavy weapons? Not a single Hawaiian was there even carrying a stick. We had a few kupuna walking with their canes, but they were later saying we need the guns because they brought their clubs. What are you talking about?
Women with
2 or 3 kupunas walking with one cane that are 80. Give me a break, you know?
I want to just say, as an educator, I actually teach racism in my courses, actually studying and reading and looking at all the different writers. And a key element with racism is fear. Yeah. Fear and racism go hand in hand. Yeah. The fear is the justification for the violence that many times is used to, and many times it's because of the fear. Violence is brought in because of, and then we understand the race as being something that does with power, has to do with privilege, and of course has to do with prejudice. But fear is really what drives, that kind of racist mentality. Is that, what do they fear? They fear Hawaiians. Why do they fear Hawaiians? That's a good question. We have never, in any of our so-called political protests, occupations, anytime we try to defend ourselves and our rights, we have never been violent. I myself have always disavowed violence as a tool because I understand this and I know. Aloha, as I say, love or couple, is the most powerful means that we have to demonstrate our humanity. Because that's really what this fight is. This fight is really about us having the ability to proclaim to the world that we have a right to be Hawaiians and to be fully Hawaiians, whether it's our language, to protect our sacred sites, to have nice, healthy lands and streams. This is our right to do so.
To have our waters flow.
And this is where the fight is, right? There's a competition that's going on at this point over the so-called resources. And so the powers to be, like the TMT and others who benefit off of this control, their response, of course, in seeing this reaction from Hawaiians who are now standing up and saying, no more, who are now standing up and saying, no, we have a right, a human right, to maintain our burials, a human right to protect our sacred sites. That image now is portrayed, exactly the story just told. We are now, therefore, because we challenge the state structure, this fear guides this kind of racist mentality, which in their eyes justifies the use of violence or even the threat of violence. And I think that's the thing that's so dangerous about this situation.
When you look at American history and you go back and you look at the evolution of the Ku Klux Klan, first they came, they talked about the threat of the black man raping the woman. Then they put on the sheets and started torching the homes of black people and stringing them up in trees. When you look at the situation here, it's exactly the same pattern. But as you point out, there has never been an arrest situation here. Kaho'olawe, no violence. Halawa Valley, we have never been violent. When they came and desecrated the burials on Kauai, there was no violence. When they came to overthrow the queen, there was no violence, and she ordered that our people lay down their weapons and pray instead. She went the way of nonviolence, and I'm proud of the work that you, Andre Perez, and others are doing right now to start training for nonviolence. I've taken the training, and I'm going to come back and get a refresher. All Hawaiians are called to defend Maunakea. We cannot respond with violence, and we cannot kowtow to those who are pushing violence, whether it's the Three Eyes, Ige, Ishibashi, and who's the other guy? Ishikawa, yes. Ige, Ishikawa, and Ishibashi. No matter what, we cannot allow them to force us to violence.
Comments that were put by, I think, Attorney General Chin, the idea that he wants to treat the next so-called protest in the same way that they treated the Haleakala protest. And let me just if you haven't seen what happened with the Haleakala protest, we had women, kupuna, and children in a lei ceremony, met with armed, riot gear police officers. I mean, when you just put in that perspective, when have we ever seen riot gear police officers in the streets? When Hawaiians gather in a peaceful way. But one of the things we learn
Governor Ige.
The more hard they come, the more soft and passive and more committed and dedicated we must be. Because our job really is to show their brutality.
That's really what happened at Haleakala. Ige and the mayor said, bring in the big weapons. They had the guns. They had the riot gear, standing there pointing at the little children, the mothers and kupunas that came with leis and gave it to them. And when they gave the leis, when they pushed the gun away and gave the lei, the officers holding the guns wept openly and put the guns down. Now comes big man Doug Chin.
Right.
We need to get rid of those
you got to tell those Hawaiian police officers how to really be.
Yeah, we're going to get rid of the crybabies and bring guys that are going to stick those guns in the face of those kupuna and babies. What are you doing, Mr. Ige? Why are you pushing violence? We can't cater to it. And this is why I'm so glad that you and others are still doing your nonviolent training. I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. If people are interested in it, how do they find out more? Well, and we will be bringing Andre Perez to come and talk about it in a future show.
In the past few years, we've gotten involved, especially just consciously really recognizing the power and really the need and the functional need of nonviolent direct action in Hawaii. Because we understand there is no way we will face off with the most powerful military machine ever created. Hawaii, in fact, is the most militarized place in the world. So that option of any kind of violent uprising is off the table. But we also know, going back exactly our own history, whether it's Lili'o Kalani, Kaeo Ahu'ula, and others in our history, that nonviolence and the use of aloha, in fact, is more powerful. And in fact, I believe worldwide, I really believe Hawaii has a place in this world to teach the world. If there's anybody that can defeat the might of this militarized mentality in regards to protecting, in regards to we defining for ourselves and standing up for ourselves to say that we are human beings and we have this humanity, we deserve to be treated as human beings. In order to do that, the only way we can overcome this threat and intimidation, and really, again, guns, is to be dedicated to aloha and kapu aloha. And I'm part of an organization called Huli, which is kind of a rebirth of the old Huli. But
Hawaiian word for overturn, turnover.
And it stands for Hawaii, United, Liberation, and Unity. Whether it is, so it's not necessary just for the Hawaiian situations. It could be other political situations within Hawaii that maybe nonviolence would be important to be used in the particular struggles. But it's also a way in which we can learn to understand how we can organize really together as a people, how we can work together as a people to come with strategies, to come with tactics perhaps, but really for a way to find ways so we can also protect ourselves so that we are able to get our messages out, importantly out to those that we'll be facing. Unfortunately for the Ige administration, their mentality, how to deal with the Hawaiians, ramp up the threat of violence. How to deal with the Hawaiians in the future, let's think about calling out the National Guard. And as I had said before, if they got to call out the National Guard, that really shows and demonstrates how weak their position is in regards to saying their justification on why they do what they do on the mountain. Because if they cannot truly treat us and see us as human beings, and they have to resort to the National Guard in Hawaii, that tells you Hawaiians are ready, as you said, we, not just being conscious Hawaiians, educated Hawaiians, Hawaiians who truly try to live their culture and breathe this culture. But by that case, you're not just criminalized, but now you'll be seen as treated as if you're domestic terrorists. You see how that fear is grown to that point now.
That's why that whole fabrication was created for the media. They were happy to grab it and run. And then came the push for the 83,000. So the 53,000 in weapons, that's the weapons that are now in the control of the DLNR, but then you're going to have the whole Hawaii National Guard coming up. The thing is, where are we going from here? I think we have two clear options. One is what Governor Ike and Mayor Harry Kim from the Big Island are proposing. This is the most strangest, most bizarre thing I have ever seen yet to date from the Ige administration. Back in April, of 2017, Ige and Harry Kim came out together announcing the solution for Maunakea. It was announced at something called the Galaxy Forum. Let's take a look at this bizarre. This was a beautiful color poster. It was put up everywhere across the Big Island. There were speeches. Here it is. This has been going on since April 2017. This is the answer for Maunakea. This is the Maunakea Monument for the World Peace, a gift from the cosmopolitan people of Hawaii. You know, when I saw this thing posted all over the Big Island, I was shocked. You know, I called the mayor's office. I said, what are you guys doing down there? They said, well, you know, the solution from Ige and the mayor is going to be, we're going to make a new temple. A world monument temple will be built on Mauna Kea, and it's a gift to the world from the cosmopolitan people. I said, you know, what is that? You know, we know Asians, we know Japanese, Chinese, Portuguese, we have Hawaiians. Who are the cosmopolitan people of Hawaii? Well, we wanted to send a clear message that this is not Hawaiians. This is the Cosmopolitan Peace Temple. So I took the little flyer. Last year, I went down to the legislature. I went to House Finance, said, you folks know about this. How much money is the legislature putting in for the new Global Peace Center, the Cosmopolitan People's Gift? The guys
and who is envisioning this whole deal?
House Finance told me, we don't know anything about what you're talking about. Go to Ways and Means. I went to Ways and Means. They told me there's no such a thing. It's not in the budget. It's not going to be in the budget next year. We don't know what you're talking about. I even gave them the flyer. Ways and Means told me, go to the DLNR. The DLNR is the one that's working on Mauna Kea. They'll tell you where the Peace Temple is. So I went down to DLNR and I told them, I said, you know, I wanted to find out about the Peace Temple that's going to be built up on Mauna Kea. And those guys told me, you know, you're trying to make trouble. There isn't going to be any Peace Temple up there. We're in charge of Mauna Kea, and we're telling you there's no Peace Temple. I took this out and I said, hey, brah, this is from Ige and Harry Kim Peace Temple. He said, maybe there is a Peace Temple.
But again, the audacity to somehow erase and make us all invisible so they can talk about some kind of new age crazy idea of you know, I mean, it really showcases
total fabrication and a lie. This is not in the Mauna Kea comprehensive plan. There's no money for it. No one in the legislature knows about it. And what it really is it's another fabrication that they're trying to propose rather than justice for the people.
And this is really no different. I had a conversation, actually a debate a few years back with an astronomer. And I always share this story, who one day told me, but Kaleikoa, Mauna Kea belongs to the world. And I looked at him and I says, the world? When did you start to speak? Where do you think that you actually speak for the world? Where do you get it in your sick mind? See, that's the
I bet he voted for Trump.
That he defines for the world?
Yeah.
And then secondly, I said, well, who gave Mauna Kea to the world? You know, this mentality, again, this is really no different than what Harry Kim and Ige is saying. That
no, that's what he's saying.
They believe that, forget about the true history of what Mauna Kea represents. The fact that we've never given consent to the taking of that summit. We've never given consent to one telescope being up there.
The fact that we own it.
We are made invisible for their
racist violence campaign.
Yeah,
that's what they're doing. They're pushing a campaign of racist violence against Hawaiian people who have constitutional and human rights is what they're doing. And we need to oppose it. We need to oppose it at the ballot box. We need to oppose it on Mauna Kea. And I'm happy to announce that at the end of their big press conference, they reminded everyone that they're not going to go anywhere fast because they now have to begin the permitting process. And that's likely to occur not on the Big Island, but right here on Oahu. 5,000 Hawaiians marched with short notice to say no. And when they start pushing this through, the DLNR, it's going to be time for us to go to those meetings. It's going to be time for us to go up to the third floor and to see the governor. I was talking with Kalani Sonoda the other day, and she told me that They had a petition with 64,000 signatures for the governor. And when they took it up to give it to the governor, out came Mike McCartney saying that the governor wasn't there and he wasn't going to accept the petition. But he had assigned Mike McCartney to accept the petition. While they were there talking with him, the back door opened, and who stuck his head out but Governor Ige? Shame on you, Governor. The real plan, Kaleikoa, as you were saying, we have to organize now.
We have to organize. We have to educate ourselves.
Nonviolent civil disobedience.
We have to educate ourselves. We have to be fearless in speaking out, demonstrating, protesting, writing letters, going to the governor's office, going to every hearing at the deal, whatever it might take. We have to do whatever is necessary to protect. And again, in the end, it's not just about protecting a mountain. It's really about protecting the culture integrity of our people.
Yes.
You know, the culture integrity
our spiritual
of our people.
wellspring.
Is this our people?
Yeah.
When, as I said, the Mauna represents our people. Is this the future of our people?
Yeah.
Plastic leis wrapped around? I mean, is this, are we going to be real? Or will we end up some kind of footnote in some Galaxy forum or Cosmo, you know? I mean, I think, and I would say the biggest thing for me is to recognize there's nothing in Hawaiian culture that supports the idea that foreign settlers or foreign corporations should control our sacred sites. Yeah. People say, you know, but astronomy is Hawaiian. I said astronomy is Hawaiian.
Colonial,
but we never,
racist.
ever believed that foreign settlers should control our sacred sites. That is the core to our culture.
I think it's patently racist.
Yes, exactly.
One of the things I asked, why is it that we cannot go to worship? When they had the TMT blessing, they waved dozens of cars to the summit. They set up tents for refreshments. No. We're going to fight it, and we're going to fight it peacefully with nonviolence.
And truth. That's what.
Check out your computer. Go to the Albert Einstein Institution website, Albert Einstein. That's an easy one to remember. They have published there 198 methods for nonviolent action. Take a look at it. We're going to be engaging in all 198. We're not going to take the gun. We're going to respond to violence with peaceful civil disobedience, and we're not going to wait for it to come to our sacred Mauna. It's going to start right here on Oahu. No more threatening of our children, Mr. Ige. No more threatening of our children, Suzanne Case. And no more commercial development on Maunakea. Kukia I Mauna. Maunakea is sacred. We will cover this story, and we will march, and if necessary, be arrested together. Aloha. Kukia I Mauna.
What is a true Hawaiian? Mana. What's a true Hawaiian? What is a true Hawaiian? Aloha. Tell me what's a true Hawaiian? Can you conceive the concept created in my brain? Apologies accepted, but the grudge remains as I stray to ease the pain that my people feel, while other people say it's no big deal. Charge one, grand larceny. Uncle Sam better wash his hands because they're filthy. He did the dirty deed, can't you see it's hurting me? So I live my life day by day, keep asserting myself, so that I may reach my full potential. Thanks and praise is not essential, and so thank God for making me what I am. Cause I'm a true Hawaiian.